Yo, what's up guys? Nate here from Protoculture and Shadow Chronicles, back again here at Sonic Academy with another how to use video. Today we are checking out a plugin from iZotope Audio. This is VocalSynth 2. Let's dive in and check it out. Right, so VocalSynth is basically a vocoder suite with some pretty cool features in it. We'll take a look at just what it does. I've got a dry vocal with some loops and MIDI parts just for reference.
You wouldn't go nowhere. Now you're going.
That's our dry vocal. Let's take a listen to what it sounds like with VocalSynth processing the vocals.
You wouldn't go nowhere.
Sweet. So let's jump in and check out what's going on with VocalSynth 2. I've got a initialized patch over here, and let's take a look at some of the controls. So the first thing you want to check out, we're just going to run through these very quickly and then kind of listen to what each of these modules does. The first thing you want to check out is the mode select up at the top. This is basically going to be able to give you the auto mode, which uses the plugin's internal synths and pitch detection to control the voices in the plugin. The MIDI mode, in my opinion, is the most useful mode. This basically allows us to route a MIDI signal into the MIDI input of VocalSynth so that we can control the voices with a keyboard or a MIDI channel. And the sidechain mode, this will allow you to basically patch in audio from pretty much any synth or any audio source you want as the carrier signal for the vocoders, which is super handy to have. Just one thing though, using the sidechain mode will disable Polyvox, since Polyvox is actually not using a carrier, it's a pitch shifter, but we'll come to that one shortly. Let's just jump, we'll do most of the demoing in MIDI mode, so we'll stick there for now. There's a couple of other controls in this center section that you want to take a look at that are quite important. Firstly, on the output section here, you've got a gate. Now, the vocoders really want to gate out any of the background noise because that really is obvious as soon as you start adding vocoders in. So we can set the threshold for the gate here. Let's just solo this. And we're going to set up our MIDI trigger as well so we can demo this. We're going to route that to this instance of VocalSynth. And let's just take a look. We'll just patch in some dry signal here first.
You were the girl.
And let's set up our gate.
From nowhere. Now you're going back there. Face.
There we go. So we're cutting out any of that background noise now. We've also got a master pan and a width control. That adjusts even the mix as well, the full mix. It's going to affect that as well. On the left-hand side here, we've got the pitch tracking. You can set this up for optimized for so high-pitched vocals, mid-pitched vocals, low-pitched vocals, and then dial in the amount of pitch corrected. This also basically dials in dry signal into the mix of vocoder modules that you have here as well. You can see now we'll have nothing playing. We can dial in our pitch correction.
Now you're going back there.
With the correction turned on, we can select a key for our track. Let's go with something like this. And you can hear the pitch correction kicking in.
Facing the unknown.
You can adjust the strength and the speed so you don't get that horrible auto-tune effect, unless you want that. But yeah, so we'll turn off the pitch correction now, and we're going to drop the volume for the input there so we can check out all the modules at the top. Oh, and just before that, we're going to just take a look at the voicing section as well. When you're in auto mode, the voicing section becomes active. We can just jump in there quickly. So this will use the pitch detection in auto mode and add voices according to the parameters that you set up here. So you can have, currently you have fifths, you also have a sub, which is an octave down, and a super octave, which is an octave up, assigned to voice 3. So these will automatically play according to the pitch detection that you've set up. We're going to jump out of that again, back into MIDI mode. And let's take a look at our 5 modules that we can use at the top here. So BioVox is essentially articulatory synthesis, which allows you to kind of adjust. It's kind of like physical modeling technology. It allows you to adjust the characteristics of the human vocal tract. You have a couple of controls like nasal clarity, shift, which is a form and shift. Let's just take a listen to that now, playing some chords in.
You were the girl from nowhere. Now you're going back there.
See the nasal control. And then this is quite handy, the breath control. It's quite nice for adding this in with the mix, just to kind of add a little bit of extra breath to your vocals.
Now you're going back there.
Especially when it's in auto mode as well, so you've got just a single voice with that breath. Quite nice to mix back into your dry signal. We're also going to click down at the bottom here. You've got a little browser section for synth presets, and then also clicking this will open up the synth section. Some of these have slightly different controls here on the left as well. This one gives you access to the vowels. So you have some control over the vowels. And then the synth section is pretty much the same for all of the modules. You have 2 oscillators that you can dial in. They have various different waveforms. There's the saws, which is a super saw wave, square, triangle, synced saw, all the basics. They can be shifted by semitones. You can adjust the detuning of each one, and also assign some modulation to the pitch and various other, the shape as well of the waveforms. Down at the bottom you have a noise generator, and then your crush and LFO modulation for the noise section, and then your LFO settings down at the bottom, the rate and the LFO shape. And lastly, in the synth section you have a master panning control over here for this module, and a master filter, which will allow you to high pass and low pass the signal. We'll jump back out of that and into our next module. We're going to take a look at the vocoder. So this is more traditional vintage vocoder sound. Let's take a listen to what that sounds like. You've got 3 different modes: hard, vintage, and smooth. And then also a form and shift once again. And lastly, the scale dial. The scale you can kind of think of almost as like a definition dial. The higher the scale, the more accurate the modulation is from the modulator signal, which is the voice. You'll have more modulation of the amplitude for the carrier signal. By dialing this back down, it'll be a much smoother modulation. Let's take a listen. And at max. Cool. And once again, we've got the synth section, which we can edit as we see fit. What I'm going to take a look at here is the bands. This is unique to the vocoder section. You actually have control over the vocoder bands. So if you want a brighter vocoder, you can adjust the high frequency content. And you also have panning for each separate band as well, which is really nice. So you can get some quite nice stereo effects out of your vocoder as well. Let's check out Compubox. This is one of my favorite modules. I'm actually going to grab a different signal to process here. This works incredibly well on spoken word stuff, and it's based on the same synthesis that came in the old Speak and Spell modules. Let's stick this onto, I'm going to just show you the original source.
This weird music. What is this?
Just some weird spoken word. And let's dial in our Compubox quickly.
This weird music. What is this?
So you have the bitrate.
This weird music. What is this?
Which is going to give you kind of like a bit crushed effect. The bytes is kind of the accuracy of the speech generation that's occurring here.
This weird music.
You can kind of get some slurring and stuff going on there. And then the bat style as well,
Music. What is this? This weird music.
which kind of changes how much noise content gets added as well. And then you have three different modes: read, spell, and math.
What is this?
And once again, you also have some synth dials here. No extra controls on the left. But what we can do here quickly is just dial in a saw, and let's take a listen. We'll pitch this right down to -12 and take a listen to the result.
This weird music. What is this? This weird music. What is this? This weird music. What is this?
We can add some modulation.
This weird music. What is this?
And this also obviously works with pitch, with MIDI notes coming in as well, so we can play chords with this. We'll jump back into our vocal section here.
You were the girl from nowhere. Now you're going back there. Facing the unknown.
Yeah, I really love that little module. So let's check out the Talkbox. This is another sort of vintage-inspired one. This comes from the sort of real Talkbox hardware, made famous for guys like Peter Frampton, where you kind of get those guitars to talk, and it's kind of controlled by an element that you fit in your mouth. We'll take a listen to the module quickly.
You were the girl
So you got a drive section.
from nowhere. Now you're going back there.
These speaker controls.
Facing the unknown. You
It's kind of like an amp simulation almost. And then obviously your formant control.
were the girl from nowhere. Now you're going back there.
And once again, we've got three different modes that we can dial in: the classic, a dark mode, and a bright mode.
Facing the unknown.
And again, we can adjust the synth settings, no extra controls over here. Lastly, we're going to come to Polyvox. So Polyvox, as I mentioned, this is not a vocoder as such, it's a pitch shifter, and it actually does a really good job of creating backing vocals based from your MIDI notes that you feed into VocalSynth. So let's just take a listen to this quickly.
You were the girl from nowhere. Now you're going back there.
So you have some controls once again the formant
You
control,
were the girl from nowhere.
character,
Now you're going back.
you kind of a brighter,
You were the girl from nowhere.
deeper, darker. So it's almost kind of adjusts almost the sex of the vocals, or gender of the vocals almost, kind of slightly more feminine that side, more male as you bring the vocal down deeper. And then you also have a humanize, which basically adds in a bit of variation, a bit of random variation to the backing vocals as well. So we can take a listen to that.
Now you're going back there.
You get a nice little chorused kind of effect. And let's play that back with the dry vocals mixed in again.
You were the girl from nowhere. Now you're going back there.
So that sounds pretty great. And you'll notice this one as well, you've only got the panning and filtering. There's no synth elements here at all. Like I said, it's not using a carrier signal to generate audio in this instance. So now the cool thing about VocalSynth is that we can actually combine all of these together to create sort of one really, really rich sounding patch. We can just enable all of these together. And as I said, you've got panning controls for each one of these as well. Let's just, for the sake of this demo, we'll just switch these into, maybe cut a little bit of the Compubox. We'll filter slightly, pan that one slightly that way. So let's come back to the center dial here, and you can see we've got this, they call it the anemone, which is basically a mix dial for all 5 of your modules. So you can adjust the volume as you see fit, and we'll play back all 5 of them at the same time now.
You were the girl from nowhere. Now you're going back there. Facing the unknown. You were the girl from nowhere.
So that sounds really nice. We've got some of the dry signal mixed in as well.
Facing facing the unknown. You were the girl.
Great. So lastly, we're going to just take a quick look down at the bottom. I'm not going to go into too much detail with these, but there's a few really nice little effects down at the bottom as well. These can be turned on and off. They each have their own individual mix controls, and they can also be reordered if you just grab them by these little controls here. You can reorder them as you see fit. We've got a ring modulator.
Nowhere. Now you're going back there, facing the unknown.
Which gives you quite nice vibrato effects. A distortion, you've got a few different distortion models that you can dial in there. The rest is fairly self-explanatory. Same goes for the filter, self-explanatory with a few different filter models that you can dial in. The transform is almost like an impulse response. It's like a cabinet effect almost. You can adjust different impulse responses.
You were the girl from nowhere. Now you're going back there.
To sort of impart different character on your audio. The shred is an interesting one. You've essentially a buffer effect, a buffer repeater. You have the master quantize, which basically indicates how fast these A, B, and C are going to switch. A, B, and C, you have individual settings for the steps that, or the quantize amount, repeater amount basically. So you can see we've got a 16th, a 32, and an 8th currently. The sequence, basically, as you pull this up, it'll have different ways that it'll run through these. You'll see it'll kind of jump around differently according to whichever sequence you dial in. And basically we end up with this kind of effect.
You were the girl from nowhere.
Which is really nice to have. Interesting little glitchy effects that you can get from that. Chorus, fairly self-explanatory, and a delay, fairly self-explanatory as well. So that pretty much brings us to the end of our little overview of iZotope's VocalSynth. I'm really fond of this plugin. The richness that you get out of this is pretty incredible, especially when you combine all 5 of the generators together. I've got a little bit of reverb on this one. You can hear the finished result like we played in the beginning from...
You were the girl from nowhere.
From that to our final patch.
You were the girl from nowhere. Now you're going back there. Seeing the unknown. You were the girl from nowhere.
So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I will catch you soon right here at Sonic Academy. Till then, see you soon.
Thanks everybody for watching, commenting, and indeed liking. We really do appreciate all the support we get here on our Sonic Academy YouTube channel. So if you found this video super useful, please, we'd love you to hit the subscribe button. We update the YouTube channel every week with new content. And if you want to watch some more relevant content, just click on the videos beside me.